بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
I was born and raised in New Zealand, and that I come from a small family, and that I only have one brother, and that my parents were Anglican, or Church of England, and that my mother was the main churchgoer. And she always ensured that we were brought up knowing about the religion, and that she always provided me with small prayer books when we were young. When I was at primary school age, we went through the Sunday school, and that, as in those days, most children in New Zealand did go to Sunday school. And when I got to intermediate, and that we went to like a church youth group, and that, so there was always religion in my life as I was growing up. And that Mum also made sure that we knew the stories from the Old Testament, a lot of the old Bible stories, and also that we were aware and knew of the stories about Jesus, and that because Jesus is very central to the Anglican religion. Yeah, so religion was always a big part of our life as we were growing up. The first I really became aware of the religion of Islam was on a trip to Malaysia. It was probably in the mid-1980s. I went over there for a couple of months with a friend, and that she was from Malaysia, and that they were from a Christian family. And so this was the first time that I heard the call to prayer, the first time I saw girls and women wearing scarves, and probably the first time that I'd even seen a masjid, a mosque. And that I had travelled already quite a bit around the world, but it was the first time I'd really been to a Muslim country. So that was when I first became aware that there was a religion called Islam, and that growing up here I think we were only really aware of Christianity and the other different sects of Christianity like the Mormons and that type. Yeah, so it was quite an eye-opener. It wasn't until probably the early 1990s that I started to question in my life just certain aspects of Christianity, and that I started to question who were we praying to, and that by this stage I had started going to a Pentecostal style church, which is a very sort of loud, kind of outgoing type of church. There was a lot of young people there, which had attracted me, and that, but yeah, I really started to question in my mind. It was not something I started to ask people, but it was something I began to question in my mind. Just who are we praying to? Are we praying to Jesus, or are we praying to God? And I think I started then to maybe not go so much to church. I didn't stop believing, but I started just holding these questions in my mind and that. And then I started concentrating more on my work and my travels, saving, that type of thing that you do when you're in your 20s. I had the opportunity to go to Egypt in the mid or early 1990s. And that was when I met my husband, and that when I was over there. And that the fact that he was Muslim didn't bother me. I wasn't going to church at the time, although, as I said, I hadn't sort of stopped believing. And that, but we got married, and then maybe about 7 or 8 years later, after we were married, when our second child was about 2 years old, and that we started to think, just what are we teaching our children? Where are we going? You know, yeah, that's when I started looking at Islam. And that I started listening to other people that had converted, and that I think that really helped, and that to understand the message of Islam. People that came from, say, English-speaking backgrounds, and that people like Bilal Phillips, also Yusuf Estes from America, he's very good, mashallah, and Abdurrahman Green from England, and that just understanding where Christianity fits in with Islam. And then when I heard that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad was a messenger of Allah, and also that Jesus was also a prophet and a messenger of Allah, then it all began to fit into place. And that, so those earlier questions that I'd been asking, and that there was the answer right in front of me. And yeah, you feel a peace in your heart, and you know that you're going the right way. I think for my mother, the hardest thing was probably for her to see me put on the scarf. It seems to be in the Western culture that when the daughter starts to cover up, it's harder for the mothers, although I wouldn't say she nagged me about it, but, you know, she'll mention it every now and then. And that my dad, he's very good, and we've kept that close relationship that we had with them before, and that the children are close to my parents. As I said, I only have one brother, and he was also very accepting, and although none of them have converted, but they haven't turned us out of their life or anything like that. The families are still very close, and we see each other quite regularly. And that my friends, they've also been very good, my friends. I can't say that I've had any problems, but I think also it was at a stage where our family were very young and their families were young, and when you've got young kids, you're busy with your own family, and so maybe it may have been a bit different if I'd been working, but because I'm a mother at home and looking after the kids, maybe that made things a little bit easier for me. I guess outwardly it changes for a woman anyway, the way you look, and that putting on a scarf, changing your style of dressing, and that longer skirts, that type of thing, more jackets, coats. Yeah, so it's changed it in that way, and that it's also, our life now revolves, of course, around the 5 daily prayers, and that, and yeah, I guess Ramadan, just little things like that, yeah, the everyday life is. Also being more aware of what's around you, being more thankful, and that for your health that you have, for the surroundings, appreciating, remembering to thank Allah for all the things that you have. Quite soon after I converted to Islam, it was one of those things I think for me, I had to plunge right into, so to speak. So I set a date, and when that date came, I put the scarf on, and yeah, and that was that. Yeah, and that otherwise I think you can maybe put it off and put it off. Yeah, but once you know that, this is what Allah wants you to do, and that, yeah, then you'll do it. They can get, first of all, peace as in peace of heart, and that the reassurance that you're not just here just for this time and now, that there is an afterlife, and that, so, yeah, that you're not just placed on earth for no reason at all, and that we're here to worship Allah, and that our good deeds will be counted, and that there is a life after death, and that which will give you peace of heart, yeah. For myself, my daily routine is still the same. I think because I was born here and brought up here, and I suppose my heart's kind of in New Zealand, so to speak, and I don't kind of have any conflict with it. And that, as I said before, maybe if I was working and coming up against people who were more questioning or a bit anti-Islam, that type of thing, life would probably be more challenging in that way. But at the moment, with being at home with the kids and through the school and kindergarten and that, the teachers have been very good. I've never felt like an outsider, and that, people have been very good. Yeah, yeah. Islam is for everyone. It doesn't matter what culture you're from, and that what religious background that you're from. If you're really searching for the truth, and that, then Islam is the right religion, and that Islam makes sense, and it can be for anyone. You don't have to be from the Middle East or from Asia or from America or New Zealand. Islam is for everyone. Islam teaches you about being good to your neighbours, and that it teaches you about bringing up your children, how to be good to your parents, and that, so it makes you more aware, I think. And that it makes you think more, makes you act more responsible, and that with the responsibilities that you have towards your parents, your neighbours, your children, your husband, wife, that type of thing. Yeah, and it's not. I find that here in this, especially in the West, we're always very much thinking about ourselves and what I can get out of life, and that Islam takes you away from that, and it's more, how can I help other people? What can I do for Allah? And that to help my parents, or to help my children, to bring them up well. Yeah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين